Good evening. This is the weekend edition of the news on DBS TV. Thanks for being with us as we go through the latest happenings in Cameroon, Africa and the world. Following the controversial tussle between the forces of law and order and some lawyers in the Bonanjo Court of First Instance in Douala, with subsequent arrest, the General Assembly of the Cameroon Bar Council has reacted through her president, General Mofo Evarostus Nkafu. In the following excerpt, Barrister Nkafu calls for calm as the case is still pending in court. Let us have him in this excerpt.
The Bar Council and the Bar Association cannot transform themselves into a court. If lawyers are abused, if lawyers are aggressed, if they are beaten up, where do we go? We go to the courts. So whatever decisions the Bar Council and the Bar Association are taking are for the primordial interest of lawyers. And as the Bar resolution said, they will reconvene on the 1st of December. We had a joint meeting. The Bureau of the General Assembly and the Bar Council had a meeting that resulted to the resolutions that were taken. And so we pray that we should be calm, make sure we bury the fallen hero, Barrister Chakute Patie Shah, in due form. He deserves that dignity. We bury him. We have that meeting on the 1st and see where we can go from there.
The second wave of coronavirus in the world is gradually creeping into Cameroon, with as much as 500 cases recorded within a week. For the first time, cases of the virus have been traced in 3 schools in the economic capital in Douala, with more than 20 students and teachers, as well as in the West region. According to government officials, there can be no other cause to this second wave of contamination than the neglect of barrier measures, which Cameroonians have long ignored. Going by the Minister of Public Health, this is a moment that the respect of safety protocols should have been a matter of concern for everyone. The Minister of Secondary Education, on her part, through a communique signed recently, suggests that the wearing of face masks should be made compulsory in schools in the country so as to stem the spread of the virus within the school milieu. In addition to the Prime Minister, he insisted that the respect of barrier measures should be a community affair in the country, calling for maximum collaboration from the public. As official statistics indicate, Cameroon now counts 23,528 cases, out of which 22,177 have recovered and 435 deaths have been recorded. Records hold that approximately 2 million children in Cameroon do not own a birth certificate, as revealed by the Minister of Public Health, Manauda Malachi. These figures boil down to less than 70% owning the documents. This automatically means a lack of access to basic rights for the children, such as nationality, education, health, and even voting in the long run.
If you don't have a birth certificate, you cannot be considered as a citizen of the country. You cannot vote. You don't have the right to go to school. So the issue which has been addressed here, give certain advantages to the population to be proud of being the Cameroonian in their country, Cameroon.
Being a major national problem, members of the Cameroon National Assembly took the civil status registration issue to the center of discussions on November 16, 2020 in a special plenary session organized under the theme, "The Issue of Issuing Birth Certificates in Cameroon." In this special session, members of parliament discussed on the importance of birth certificates to children and, above all, the need for government to give more value and facilitate its issuance. The MPs, while briefing others on birth certificate ownership in their constituencies they represent, blamed the situation on a number of factors, including the conflict in Cameroon's English-speaking regions, the attacks by Boko Haram militants in the north, illiteracy, and corruption.
it's a problem which we should not neglect. If we take, for example, the division of Mbam and Enugu, where we have registered about 55,000 people without birth certificate. You can say that if we make the round of the whole country, we see that many of them do not have a birth certificate. This is why, when they address this kind of issue at the National Assembly, I can only be glad of it.
This situation is most severe in the east, south, north and far north regions of the country, where people grow up without birth certificates. Hence, only 66.2% of the Cameroonian population is declared as citizens. This has persisted for many years despite the measures and actions taken by the public authorities. However, the government has again promised to try and ease the procedures for getting a birth certificate in Cameroon. The scarcity of onions in Cameroon's economic capital is becoming unbearable, as it is felt not only by traders but by consumers as well. Traders in Douala's Marché d'Oignon blame the price increase on scarcity caused by the off-season, since the harvest season in the main production areas of the north and far north regions is February and March. Thus, it is a normal phenomenon for the onions to be scarce in this period, some traders explained. The price hike and scarcity is also blamed on insecurity from the Boko Haram crisis in the concerned regions. An average-sized onion that used to cost 50 francs now costs up to 100 or 150 francs CFA. For retailers, a bag has increased from 60,000 francs to 120,000 francs CFA, as they explain. Cameroon-produced onion is available, yet largely insufficient, reason why imported onions from Sudan, though less appreciated, now compensates for local production, while waiting for the availability in large quantity from mid-December till late February. Here we are in Douala, particularly in the Douala 1 subdivision. It is a metropolitan city which reconciles in spite of itself the dynamism of its populations with the disorder of its neighborhood. Miles away from the Douche municipal area, our observation is remarkable, with the dilapidated stretch of road that makes circulation difficult for vehicles and commercial motorbike riders. According to this taxi driver, the situation is pathetic, as he wonders what government officials think whenever they go through the road. To this bike rider, it causes a lot of inconvenience, especially when there is traffic. The damages are visible as it causes punctured tires and constant breakdowns, forcing them to go for constant repairs. By so doing, they say reduces their income and savings. Yet, the rehabilitation of this road requires just the will from those who have the competent authority to do so. A group of protesters have taken to the streets in South Africa, striking over racism as a school organized what they call a white-only graduation party in a Cape Town school. On Friday, South African anti-riot police fired tear gas and water cannon at nearly 2,000 members of the radical left Economic Freedom Fighters Party who gathered near the school. The protesters eventually dispersed but still regrouped a few blocks away. Some protesters say they were quite peaceful in their activity and have accused the police of being heavy-handed. The school, on its part, denies the event was an official function and maintains it was privately organized by parents. The protest came as the latest in a series of demonstrations as they erupted between a group of Economic Freedom Fighters, EEF, and members of the Breckenfell Community School after a party that was only attended by white peoples. A few days after the party, EEF members tried to march to the school but were blocked by some of the students' parents, resulting in fights. President Cyril Ramaphosa has reacted, calling for an investigation and describing the confrontations as deeply regrettable. Uganda's pop star presidential candidate Bobi Wine has been released on bail, local media reported, as his arrest sparked deadly protests between his supporters and police. Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, was arrested on Wednesday in eastern Uganda, leading to a death toll in clashes reaching 37, as police announced. Uganda police pathologists also confirmed that between 350 and 500 people are reported to have been arrested during the demonstrations in the Ugandan capital. Police have used tear gas, water cannons, rubber bullets and live rounds in efforts to contain the protest and disperse the demonstrators. Bobi Wine, his release came late Friday after authorities charged him with acts likely to spread coronavirus as he gathered crowds of over 200 supporters in his latest presidential campaign, which the law prohibited as a preventive measure for COVID-19. While in court, he said it is Museveni, that is referring to incumbent leader President Yoweri Museveni, who is supposed to be in this dock for killing innocent citizens. Mr. Wine is now a leading opposition candidate for the January 14, 2021 presidential elections, in which Uganda, a nation of 42 million people, would have to decide whether President Yoweri Museveni, 76, who aims to extend his rule to at least 40 years, remains in power. Citizens of Burkina Faso will be choosing their next leaders as they go to the polls on Sunday, November 22, for presidential and legislative elections amid political unrest, demonstrations and jihadist attacks. The country's president, Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, is standing for re-election against 12 other contenders, including the runner-up in last year's presidential election, Yeli Monique Kam, the only female candidate, and a new candidate from the old party of former Burkinabe President Blaise Compaoré, as well as Zéphirine Diabré, a former Burkinabe finance minister. Contrary to its neighbors, Burkina Faso's presidential election is not overshadowed by constitutional disputes. However, the security situation has dramatically declined in this nation of around 20 million people following jihadist attacks in the wider Sahel region that have spread into the north and east of Burkina Faso over the past 5 years, further claiming more than 1,200 lives and forcing around 1 million people from their homes. Incidents of insecurity have been witnessed in the period leading up to the election, and there are fears of violence during and following the election in the country, like with a number of other African countries who recently went to the polls in elections with high domestic and regional stakes. Biotechnology giant Pfizer and its partner BioNTech have on Friday filed for emergency authorization in the United States of their COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer announced on Friday that it has asked U.S. regulators to allow emergency use of its COVID-19 vaccine, setting in motion a process that could bring limited first administration of the vaccine as early as next month and eventually bring an end to the pandemic. Filing in the U.S. represents a critical milestone in our journey to deliver a COVID-19 vaccine to the world, and we now have a more complete picture of both the efficacy and safety profile of our vaccine, giving us confidence in its potential, Pfizer CEO Dr. Albert Bourla said following the announcement. This comes just few days after Pfizer Inc. and German partner BioNTech announced that its vaccine is 95% effective at preventing mild to severe COVID-19 disease while continuing studies. The Food and Drug Administration process is expected to take a few weeks, and an advisory committee that will meet to review the vaccine has been scheduled for early December. If the BioNTech company's application is approved, the vaccine would likely be limited and given out out in phases, with healthcare workers, the elderly people, and those with underlying health conditions getting the first shot. Essential workers, teachers, and people in homeless shelters and prisons would likely be next, followed by children and young adults. We end in China, where Hong Kong authorities announced on Friday the closure of more schools for 2 weeks, starting on Monday, following rising coronavirus cases, local media reported. The country's government has suspended in-person classes for lower primary school students, that is grades 1, 2, 3, after the country's top health official, Sophia Chan, said the coronavirus situation in the country was severe. The suspension came just more than a week after kindergartens were ordered to close following an outbreak of upper respiratory tract infections resembling COVID-19. The health secretary warned that the situation is deteriorating rapidly in the territory and urged the people to be extra vigilant and avoid unnecessary gatherings. Hong Kong confirmed 26 new coronavirus infections on Friday, 21 of which were local cases. This added up to bring the total number of cases to 5,491. So far, 108 people have died, while 5,233 have recovered, according to health authorities. The authorities will assess the situation later as to whether the suspension needs to be extended. That rounds it up for this weekend edition of the news on DBS TV. Thanks for watching, and do well to stay with us for a lovely weekend. Goodbye for now.